Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. It's been a day since my last confession. I failed to honour my mother. She put up with so much from me, more than she deserved. You remember I just found out she'd been rushed to hospital? Well, I had to visit her, didn't I? I didn't know how she'd react when I walked through the door. I've been declared officially dead now, by the way. It was in the paper. So I knew she wouldn't exactly be waiting for me to pop in. But I needed to do it. She's my mum. She was in the Buckland, same as Elizabeth. I hadn't expected to be back there so soon. It was different this time, though. My mum had a private room. I spoke to one of the nurses beforehand, said I was my mum's nephew, Bill, and she explained what had happened. She was all, "It's awful, her son died last month and it did for her something terrible. That's what caused it. She's been going downhill since I went off the cliff. She didn't stop crying for weeks, apparently. She barely ate, and then to top it off, she found out she might lose the house. It's in my name, and now I've been declared dead. The bastards I owe money to are going after her. The stress of it all just got too much, and then yesterday morning she had a stroke. They can't say officially that there's a connection, of course, but there is. It's my fault. And the worst part is, she had a stroke before, 2 years ago. A bad one. The doctor said then that she might not survive another. The nurse showed me to her ward, and I went in. I barely recognised her. She looked so pale and sallow, not the same person at all. But she recognised me right away, even though I've lost my beard, and even though she thought I was dead. She knew who I was the moment I stepped inside. I could see the recognition, the delight, the disbelief in her eyes. She was all, "David, my baby, oh, it's a miracle." Which was kind of awkward because I'd still got the nurse standing next to me. I was all, "Oh yeah, she calls me David, it's short for Bill. You can leave us now." The nurse gets out and I walk over and stand beside the bed. My mum looks up at me, happy but confused. She was all, "Is this heaven? Have you come to show me the way? Can I meet Clark Gable?" I was all, "Clark Gable? What about Dad?" And she was all, "Oh, him too, of course." I said, "No, Mum, you can't. It's not heaven." And she was all, I said, "No, not there either. Just Dover. I'm not dead, Mum. I'm not a ghost or an angel or any of that. I'm just a man. I'm alive." She was all, "But how is that possible? There was film. I saw the film. You jumped off a cliff, my silly, silly boy. How could you have survived? What happened to you?" And so I told her the whole story. Not the rent boy stuff, but everything about Elizabeth, how I thought God had saved me when I tried to kill myself so I could keep my promise to watch over her, how I'd been trying to live up to that promise, all of it. And my mum listened, and when I finished, she just shook her head sadly and told me a story. It was something that happened when I was a kid. We'd rescued a starling the cat had caught, but it was injured, so we kept it in a cage overnight until it could fly again. The next day, my mum said I could be the one to release it. But I didn't want to. I'd come to love that little bird. So I took the cage into the garden, lifted out the starling, looked over my shoulder to make sure no one could see, and then I put the bird in a shoebox and took the shoebox up to my room. The bird lived in that shoebox under my bed for the next 2 weeks. I fed it bread and sometimes worms and slugs from the garden. And it had a little dish of water. I'm still amazed my mum never caught on. After 2 weeks, I opened the shoebox one day, and the bird was dead. That was the moment my mum happened to walk in on me, and she saw me holding the dead bird, and I started to cry and told her what I'd done. And she was all, "That bird would still be alive if you let it go." A few weeks later, my dad found a nest. It had got 5 little baby starlings in it, all dead. I don't know for sure, but I think maybe that nest belonged to my bird, and if I'd never put it in that shoebox, maybe it would have made it back in time to save them. So my mum lay in her hospital bed and reminded me of this story, and she was all, "That's always been your problem, David. You can't let go of things, and by holding on to them for too long, you destroy them." She's right, I know she is. It's what happened before with Elizabeth when I went a bit mad and stalked her. But I've let it happen again, haven't I? I thought I was helping her this time, I truly did, but what have I achieved? I've freaked her out, I've made her break an arm, and I've killed another bloody bird. Maybe it's time I let her go. Quentin's a twat, but is it really for me to decide who she should date? He can't be any worse than I was, can he? I looked at my mum, and I started to cry, and I said, "You're right. I'm sorry. You've been a wonderful mum, and I've just been the world's shittest son, haven't I? I'm sorry I fucked things up with Elizabeth. You were right. She would have fixed me. She would have made me okay." And my mum tried to lift her arms to hug me, but she was so weak and she couldn't manage it. So I rested my head on her shoulder and held her hand, and there were tears rolling down my face, and I said, "You must be so disappointed in me." And she was all, "Don't be such a silly boy. I was never disappointed in you." She said, "I've always thought of you as like a disorientated marathon runner. When you set off, you can run so fast and so far, and by God, you make me proud. It's just that you set off in completely the wrong direction." She said I execute terrible, horrible ideas magnificently. That's it exactly. Secretly, I always knew that about myself. I just didn't realize anyone else did. And she said, "Here's what you need to do, son. When a marathon runner takes a wrong turn, he doesn't keep running, he stops, he gets his bearings, he gets back on the right track. Get on the right path, David. Use that brilliant brain of yours to do something good." And I said, "I'll do it, Mum. I swear I will. I'll stop all this crap with Elizabeth. I'll make everything right again." And she smiled and said, "I know." And that was the last thing she said. I felt her hand go limp in mine, and I knew it was the end. My mum's dead. I'm an orphan. And it's over with Elizabeth. I meant what I said. But that just puts me back where I was in the beginning, doesn't it? The day I jumped off the cliff. I've got no purpose, no aim in life. No reason to live, really. I wonder if I were to jump off the cliff again, would God save me a second time? Would I get another miracle? There's only one way to find out.